It's actually slipping on easier than I thought. I thought I might have a problem with getting over the shaft here. Remember, the key is off this shaft. The key is still on this one, and it clears the new oil seal okay. That bottom timing chain, or the bottom chain that goes to the oil pump, you really have to stuff it upwards to get it around the that block that's pulled back. So make sure you have the chain stuffed up, slide the block under, and I think now just tightening the bolts will pull it all back together. Well, the only bolts that I could really get on was the one over here and the one over here. When I started tightening those, it obviously was tilting the top part of the cover out a little bit, which means that the rubber seal here wasn't going on completely square. So now I've repurposed my hunk of steel here that I used for pulling the cover off. Now I've just got to bolt it in with the two tensioner bolts, and I've got a little socket up against the front of the cam cover, so hopefully as I tighten these bolts it'll push on the socket, which will push the top of the cover in so I can actually get these other bolts started. And I'm keeping an eye on this seal down here to try and tuck it in as it meets the metal of the crankshaft so it doesn't get flipped out. Okay, that other piece of steel was way too flimsy, so I broke out the bar stock steel and using the same bolts, just steel that won't bend, and as I tighten the bolts the cover is going on nicely, and I'm still keeping my eye on the edge of that oil seal down there. Okay, front cover is on. Now I need to unlock or uncock this thing, so put my screwdriver on the little plastic screw, give it a little twist, bink, there it goes. Now it's pressing on the chain, and the oil pan's ready to go on. All the surfaces are nice and clean. Okay, liquid gasket is carefully put on, surrounding every hole. And now the oil pan will go on. Okay, now that the oil pan from upside down is buttoned up, now it's time to put my rejuvenated boot back on my shifting mechanism, and then put the block and the all the little equipment things on there, and we'll get that set. Okay, I got my oil pan on and everything tightened up. I also put my crank sensors back on. Tighten up the nut that held them. Make sure you get all the little bolts that are stuffed up in there. As you may or may not be able to see, I have my cam drive wheel back with its brazing to hold the fence on just in case. Now I'm just going to tap it on. I already put the key in. Okay. I'm putting my bolt on loosely, and actually thinking about it, maybe I'll leave it off because right now, since the chains are hooked up, if I actually blast this on with the impact wrench, it'll spin the crank and then I'll lose my top dead center. So I'm just going to leave the bolt off until I get the cam belt on. Okay, before put tensioners and all that stuff on, got to put the back plastic cam belt cover on, because the tensioners are going to cover that up. So don't make the mistake of putting that on too late. And there it is. Okay, I got my first official Hill Engineering tensioner bearing in. I did expect the bolt to pull it in for me, but it isn't actually long enough. What I did do is heat up the pocket in the block where this slides into, expand it a little bit, put the bearing in and just tapped it in with a hammer. It actually went in pretty easy. But it has to go in almost all the way before the bolt will catch it and pull it home the rest of the way. Okay, with the other bearing that has the spring in it, I kind of wired a zip strip onto it and have been cranking it down to try and cock it so I can get the timing belt on easier, and then just pop the zip strip and it'll hopefully fit. And just pop the crank wheel on for a minute just to make sure that it's still at top dead center. I checked all my cam timing marks. They're all where they should be. The tensioner is set up but held back with the zip strips, so we'll try and put the timing belt on here. Okay, after struggling for a while with this thing, what I ended up doing to get even more pullback on this one is I used a strap with a clicky bar here that you can tighten it up. I just wrapped it around the frame here, ran it up to the pulley and cranked, and finally I got the damn thing on without having to pry it on. Once I got my marks lined up, I had used clamps to try and keep everything where it's supposed to be, so hopefully this will work. So the timing belt is on, and I think all the marks line up. My only concern is how much you can move this crankshaft wheel back and forth before the timing belt itself starts to move, so it gives quite a bit of margin for error down here. There's a listing for the torque specifications for these two bolts. This one's like 72 foot-pounds, and this one's like 144. I just put them on the old impact wrench and cranked them home. Okay, now if you're an idiot like I am and you left your cardboard in that was supposed to be locking your cams and then turned your cams while obsessing on your timing correctness, you need to pull your cam caps back off, or the bearing caps where you had the cardboard, and double check these little grooves here in the cam. Make sure they haven't filled themselves up with cardboard. Same thing for the little oil holes. You need to make sure all that's clear, but hopefully you'll be smart enough to pull your cardboard out before you spin your crankshaft. Okay, next surprise is the gasket for the cam covers. When you look at it, it looks fine, but then you realize it's got these straight pieces on where you've got the curvature of the cam seal, so apparently it's squared off for shipping, but you need to chop these off when you actually install it, so I'll be cutting. Okay, the other cam cover is on, but learning from experience, you're probably better off putting the paper gasket on before you put the liquid gasket around these seals at the end, just because it takes a while to trim the paper gasket properly, and you don't want your goo to be skinning over. The other thing is the gasket kind of sags over the spark plug holes, so when you put the cam cover on, stuff the paper towels in, if nothing else, to keep it centered so they don't dangle down once you tighten the nuts down.